Hey everybody, Josh Madakor here. In this video, we're going to go over the 2025 stats for everybody who got IT and cybersecurity jobs out of the cyber range. And before we get started, I have to explain what the cyber range is and like what it's for, so this whole video makes sense. But basically, this thing that you're looking at here is a list of people who we know about who got jobs, who actually have a LinkedIn, who are part of the CyberRange community. So basically what happens is you join the CyberRange, it's our community, and then you'll get onboarded to our security operations center. It's like a live SOC, and it has enterprise tools in it like Tenable, vulnerability management, Defender for Endpoint, Microsoft Sentinel, and we use Azure for like our basic, or I guess it's called Entra ID, but we use Azure for like our basic infrastructure and identity provider. And it's like a normal work environment. There's about 1,200 users in there with like a ton of organic logs and a ton of organic attack traffic. You join, you learn how to use the tools, you get training on how to do the stuff, and then you practice vulnerability management and practice security operations. And then we have like a bi-weekly threat hunts and capture the flags and everything. And the whole idea is you go through all that stuff, and then we do like an employment verification for you if you participate in the internship program. And then it kind of like bridges the gap between like just having Security Plus and then being able to be hireable. So all these people were part of that community. In 2025, we did the math, and it was about like every 3.7 days or so, somebody got a job out of the cyber range. And not all of those people are here. This list is basically just the people who we know about who actually have a LinkedIn profile, because most of this data, well, basically all of it was pulled from LinkedIn. So just to give you some idea. In this video, we're going to cover a lot of stuff. We're going to try to see some correlation between which certifications people were getting who actually got hired, like how many people had a degree who got hired, the people who had degrees, like how many certs did they have, like which certs are popular, which degrees are popular. And we're just going to talk about a bunch of statistics as well as superlatives. Like we're going to identify people who like really stood out among these people. So the whole purpose of this is to give you some kind of idea of what it might take to get hired, like which certifications did you get, like how much effort should you put, like what should you do, etc. Again, these are mostly based off of like credentials, right? And then their LinkedIn profile. And I just want to say it takes more than that, right, to get a job, which is why I made this cyber range, because it helps you get some like verifiable experience, and we'll do like employment verification. But this information is really, really useful. So I just wanted to give you some context before we get started. So jumping right into things. Oh, and by the way, like you can look at this actual list too. I'll put like a link to it in the description. And this self-announcement URL, this is just where the person announced that they got a job. For example, like if I click like this person's, for instance, it goes into the community, like where they talk about they got the job, and you can kind of see it here. So a lot of the time that's where we figured out like when people got jobs, or like they would DM me sometimes like here. But yeah, these are all like different links where you can see like people talking about like when they got their job. But okay, hopping right into the analysis. So we're gonna go over superlatives first. Superlatives just means like somebody who like really stand out. It's kind of like you can think about it like an award, right? So there's 4 people who got hired with 0 certs actually. 3 of them had degrees, and then there was 3 people who got hired with no certs or degree. Trevino Parker, Andrew Stokes, and Moises Flores. And then getting into certification insights, out of all the people who got hired out of the cyber range, the average number of certs they had getting hired was 3.6 certs. And then median certs is 3. So most people who got hired had 3 certs is what that means. And then the person who got hired who had the most certs was 17 certs. And there were 7 people, about 8%, who got hired with 0 certs. And then getting into the top 10 most common certifications out of all the people who got hired out of the cyber range, number 1 most common certification was Security Plus at 57% of people who had that. Network Plus, 35% had that. A Plus, 29%. CISA Plus, 26%. Google Cybersecurity Certificate, 24%. Certified in Cybersecurity from ISC Squared, 15%, ITIL Foundations, 14%, Pen Test Plus, 14%, AWS Cloud Practitioner, 11%, and then AZ900 Azure Fundamentals, 10%. And then some key certification insights. Security Plus is basically the king of certifications out of all the people who got hired out of the cyber range. 57% of people had Security Plus. It's required for all clearance positions, and it's the most common cert across every single role type in the list of people who got hired. And then continuing with the certification insights, the CompTIA trifecta, that is A Plus, Network Plus, and Security Plus, 27% of people had the trifecta, and it's a strong foundation, but it's not actually required to get hired. Continuing on, Google Cybersecurity is legit. 22 total people had it. That's about 1/4 of people. 5 people got hired with Google Cybersecurity Cert as their only certification. Some of the roles people landed with only Google Cybersecurity were Vulnerability Management Analyst, Cybersecurity Analyst, Security Analyst, and then Major Incident Manager. And then CISA Plus versus Pentest Plus. CISA Plus holders, 26% of people had that. 14% of people had Pentest Plus. And then both of these certifications, at least from our pool of people who got hired out of the cyber range, led to similar roles, that is like SOC analyst and working in a general SOC work. And then getting into single cert success stories, Security Plus, 3 people got hired with only Security Plus, 5 people got hired with only Google Cybersecurity, 1 person got hired with only certified in cybersecurity, and then one person got hired with the Qualys Vulnerability Management Cert. Some more insights. 4 people listed expired certs and still got hired. There was very likely more than only 4 people with expired certs. So this is another insight. Like, it doesn't matter if your certs are expired unless you're working for defense. In that case, they're going to tell you, and then they'll usually pay for you to like renew your certs. Now getting into degree insights. People with degrees. 81% of people had some kind of degree. 19% of people had no degree. And then average number of degrees per person is 1.3 degrees. And then 17% of people, or 14 people, had master's degrees. And then getting into degree type, 61 people had bachelor's degrees, 16% had associate's degrees, 16 people had associate's degrees, 14 people had master's degrees, and then 16 people listed their degree in progress. And then getting into degree fields, I won't get into this, like I won't read all of these out, but basically like slightly over a quarter people had degrees in cybersecurity, 7 people had degrees in IT, 6 people had degrees in information systems, 6 people had degrees in computer science, 3 in networking, 3 in business, and then 19 people had degrees in some other field. WG seems to be pretty popular. Out of the whole list, 8 people were showing that they graduated from WG, or at least went to there. And then WG graduates got roles as SOC analyst, cyber defense analyst, risk management specialist, help desk, and IT technician. And then getting into the no degree required as a reality, 16 people, or 19% of the people out of the cyber range who got jobs didn't actually have a degree. And some of these people got jobs with the title of senior cloud security engineer, cybersecurity specialist, vulnerability management analyst, and then SOC analyst. And then getting to the actual role analysis, so the different types of roles landed, 21% of people out of the cyber range got hired in other IT. 19% got hired as a security analyst or a security engineer. 19% got hired as IT support or help desk. 13% as SOC analyst. 13% as cybersecurity other designated cybersecurity, however you want to say that. 10% got hired as a sysadmin or network admin, and then 4% or 3 people got hired into vulnerability management specific roles. And I will say that other cybersecurity and other IT, those will have like a lot of cybersecurity function in them. It's just that the title might not have necessarily been like vulnerability management or security analyst or something like this. So you just have to like take these kind of with a grain of salt. So SOC analyst profile, 10 people landed designated SOC jobs, and then the average certs from these people who landed SOC roles was 5. So the people who landed SOC specific roles had 5 certs, and then the top certifications were Security Plus, Network Plus, A Plus, and CISA Plus for these groups of people. Cleared in government positions, at least that we know about, 3 of these people got hired into government contracting. Getting into LinkedIn insights, 70% of people had 500 connections or more, and then 12% of people had under 100 connections. Takeaway from this is connections help, but they're not everything. Someone got hired as a security analyst with only 2 connections. So this kind of plays into the thing I'm always preaching about, the employability framework. You have to kind of hit everything from every different angle as possible, like LinkedIn, certifications, education, hands-on experience, etc. Like everything comes into play, right? Because some people have no degrees, no certs, they get hired. Some people have no online presence, they get hired, etc. So just something to remember. And then gender insights based on name alone, about 87% of hirees out of the cyber range were male, 13% are female, and this is actually oddly in line with my YouTube audience analytics. It's almost exactly this actually, which is really interesting. Getting into some success patterns, things that have gotten people hired fastest, like the minimum requirements. That is cyber roles with 2 or fewer certifications. There were 19 people in this group. Getting into the Google Cybersecurity Cert is enough path. 5 people got hired with Google Cybersecurity certification as their only certification. These roles included Major Incident Manager, Vulnerability Management Analyst, Cybersecurity Analyst, Security Analyst, and Associate Cybersecurity Engineer. And I do want to remind you of the fact that certifications, like, not the only thing, right? You have to bridge the gap into just having certifications to getting hired one way or another, right? You can do that with like your own effort, projects, CyberRange, literally like a ton of different ways to do it. Some key takeaways, Security Plus is the MVP. 57% of people who got hired out of the CyberRange had Security Plus. No degree is not a problem. 19% of people were hired without a degree, so this kind of leads you to believe that certification and skill might matter more. Google Cert is a legit entry point, which I agreed with from the start. There's a lot of career changers within the CyberRange from like any random career that you can think of. It doesn't really matter as long as you bridge the gap one way or another. LinkedIn connections aren't everything. IT support is a valid path. 19% of people started in IT or support roles as their entry. The average hire has 3.6 certifications. You don't need 17 like Wayne has. WG Works, 8%, or rather 8 members came through WG's program. CISA Plus shows commitment. 26% of people had CISA Plus, and even expired certifications matter. There's also another interesting correlation between degrees and certifications out of all the people who got hired out of the CyberRange. Basically, the more degrees you have, the more certifications you end up having, and it's almost perfect. So for example, the people who had 0 degrees had an average of 1.9 certs. The people who had 1 degree had an average of 3 certs. The people who had 2 degrees had an average of 4.8 certs. The people who had 3 degrees had an average of 5.5 certs. And the people who had 4 degrees had an average of 9 certifications. And this is even accurate for myself. I have like 3 degrees and I have like a decent number of certifications. So this is actually really, really accurate. And it looks like people who collect degrees also collect certifications as well. And for the people who don't have degrees, their favorite certifications to get, or at least according to this data, is Security Plus at 36%. These are people with no degrees, remember. So Security Plus at 36%, Network Plus at 29%, Google Cybersecurity at 21%. And then people who had 2 or more degrees, their favorite certifications are Security Plus, 70%, CISA Plus at 48%, and Network Plus at 48%. And then people who had master's degrees averaged 5.4 certs. Their favorite certs are CISA Plus, Pentest Plus, and SSCP. Yeah, these are the analytics for 2025, people getting hired out of the CyberRange. And we do a bi-weekly threat hunt. We give away about $2,000 a month in prizes. 20 different people will win. It's partially speed-based and then partially based on like a random roll. So if you just complete the threat hunt, you might have a chance to win. And it's really, really good. I promise you won't regret it. But anyway, let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I'll do my best to answer them, and we will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.